Welcome back to the program. President Trump is changing the name of the Department of Defense back to the Department of War, which was in use until 1947. The order comes after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Trump have spoken in recent weeks about the imminent change, with the commander in chief noting the previous name had a stronger sound. According to reports, an official name change would need to be made through legislation, which the administration will push for. In the meantime, however, President Trump will authorize the use of the Department of War as a secondary title. Of course, we should switch back to that name. We won wars under that name. The president is calling on the Hamas terror group to give back hostages with the hopes of bringing a rapid end to the war in Gaza. President Trump took to Truth Social, writing, "Tell Hamas to immediately give back all 20 hostages, not 2 or 5 or 7, and things will change rapidly. It will end. The Israel Defense Forces have reportedly determined that the Gaza City operation could take 4 or 5 months to complete, after which Netanyahu has talked about a subsequent operation to conquer the refugee camps in the Central Strip. These are actions that they have to take in order to force Hamas back to the table and to eliminate the terror group from being their next door neighbor. People who don't understand that actually haven't taken the time to read the history or look at the maps or really take the position of being against terrorism. Joining me now to discuss is senior policy analyst for Middle East and North Africa at the Heritage Foundation, Daniel Flesch. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you, Stacy. Great to be here.
So let's talk about these Middle Eastern updates. I was recently in Israel and I had a chance to speak to a mother who she's a resident of the Near Oz kibbutz. She's in leadership there, and her son was killed in the October 7th attack. And she was sharing with us the events of the day, the timeline, and we were just sitting there, just riveted, unbelievably. It was so gut wrenching listening to her talk about they just didn't expect an attack. They were literally the way we are every day, kind of strolling along, drinking our coffee and checking our phones. They were working on their farm equipment, and they're setting up an entire community there. And as I was listening to her talk and thinking about what my response would be as an American, I'm prior military. I do have a kind of militaristic attitude about when other countries do things. I don't go to the compassion side. I go to what is our fastest military action that could end a hostage situation, an incursion into another country. And I thought about the response that America would make if we had an invasion of that type here. And then I was watching her describe they're still right there on the border with Gaza. And I couldn't believe my Western mind couldn't wrap itself around what happened to them and how it's been this long. Oh, 2 years. We're coming up on 2 years and there are still hostages. Give me your thoughts and analysis on where we are today that they won't give back these last 20 people.
Certainly, and I served in the Israeli Defense Forces myself, and have that perspective of soldiers right now are continuing to wage this war against Hamas in Gaza. And there's always been two aims of the war for Israel, and they've been two co-equal aims. One is to defeat Hamas, that means militarily, and remove it from power as a governing force in the Gaza Strip. And two is to return the hostages. Now, at day 700 of the war, there are 48 hostages still remaining in Gaza, 20 of whom are believed still alive, and 28 are no longer alive. And so when President Trump put out that Truth Social, he was referring to the 20 who are still alive. And Hamas actually released videos to the families of two of the hostages just the other day, and Israel made those public yesterday. And so this war now continues on. Hamas has been summarily defeated. It effectively is defeated as a military fighting force, but the fact that it still holds territory, predominantly in Gaza City, where this newest initiative is taking place, shows that it is not politically defeated, at least. And the only thing that's stopping that from Israel, to your point, your mindset of if they do this action on October 7th, which is equivalent in terms of quantitative numbers, about 15 9/11s for Israel, but in many ways is a much larger psychological and political impact. They would have been defeated a long time ago if not for having the hostages. There's still Jews, alive and dead, being held in terror dungeons underneath Gaza that Israel's fighting for, fighting to return home. And so right now, as we add the 700th day of this war, Israel has not lost sight of the goal here of what victory looks like, and to really race against time before the international community continues to put more pressure on Israel. And the Trump administration has been very supportive. Again, President Trump's truth post just the other day, but certainly he wants peace in the Middle East. He wants the war to end, but he's also saying, Israel, do it on your terms.
I mean, I was really glad to see him say that to kind of unleash the power of the IDF and to allow Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and his cabinet, others, the leadership at the IDF, to really make strategic decisions based on what tactics would bring about the result that they're looking for. Because in the calculations that militaries make when they're trying to achieve goals, politics only gum up the works. Military incursions and activities are best implemented with strategy based on the opponent, not based on, well, what will the media say, or what will, the left in America do to American Jews who are on college campuses if we do X, Y, or Z. Those things actually, they decrease the effectiveness of military operations. I feel like there's a lack of understanding. You mentioned the toll that it's taking on Israelis. There's a lack of understanding of just how deeply felt the attack has been on Israelis, and how they're still working their way through the healing process, which can never actually be complete until all of the hostages and remains are recovered. So it's the act of terrorism is ongoing. I don't think people really talk about that enough.
I think it's a really good point to bring out. This is not just a war between two warring either militaries or political governments, but again, it's against a people. It's against the Jewish people. And if there were not hostages, as I said earlier, this war from a military standpoint would have been over long ago, probably within a matter of weeks, if not a couple months after October 7th. But because there are hostages, again, that proves again that this war is not against the state of Israel per se, but against the Jewish presence in the land of Israel. And this war could have ended on the afternoon of October 7th or October 8th if Hamas returned the hostages. Of course, did not take any to begin with. But the fact that they continue to hold them, and there's not one Palestinian in Gaza that has taken up the multiple offers from the Israeli government or private individuals for millions of dollars to give information or to return the hostages to Israel, also says something. And Israelis are not in a point yet of recovering from this. They're still in a trauma. There's no PTSD here. There's no post-traumatic stress. So this is going to take a long time for Israel to recover from, psychologically, certainly. But again, taking a broader look at things, where Israel is today, 700 days into this war, they defeated Hezbollah in the north. They defeated Hamas effectively, again, except for the hostages in the south. The Assad regime in Syria has fallen. The 12-day war demonstrated that Israel can take out Iran's, with the help of the United States, nuclear and ballistic missile programs, etc. And certainly the American people should understand that this war is not just being fought in the Middle East, it's being fought also in the Midwest and across our country as well. Because all these pro-Palestinian supposed supporters are truly pro-Hamas. More to the point, they're anti-Semitic and anti-American. And when this war ends in the Middle East, it will not end here. So we must still be vigilant and pushing back against those forces inside our own borders.
Absolutely. That was one thing that I noticed, that the Israelis permit Muslims who don't even agree that Israel has a right to exist to live in their borders. You have Muslims in your parliament, the Knesset. We visited the Knesset and got to hear from the speaker there. And we were sitting there in this, this is your political structure. We're in this beautiful building. And I was continually struck by the way that Israelis are willing to live alongside those who hate them and wish them ill, where in America, we basically are like, it's not just our country that we demand people who don't agree with us, people who don't think we have the right to exist, must stay out of our country. We also say you can't operate in our hemisphere. We have the Monroe Doctrine, which until recently under Democrat presidents has stood as a stark reason for people to fear us and to fear our military intervention in their country. As we close out here, the Department of War, the new name for the Pentagon, I'm loving it.
Yes, certainly. It really functionally it won't change much within the department, obviously, but it's really a message to multiple audiences. One, that the president's overall posture of peace through strength is just that. You need to have the strength to bring peace, and this brings a different kind of posture to that the United States is returning to its origins of being a lethal fighting force, of having the military that's focused about defeating and deterring our enemies and not waiting to go on the defense. So it's a
Daniel,
it's a welcome change, certainly, and we'll see if it sticks with legislation as well.
I love it. Daniel Flash, Senior Policy Analyst at Heritage. Thanks for coming on. Happy weekend to you.
Thank you, Stacey. You as well.
All right. And when we return, a big, ugly wind farm installation threatens to impact air traffic around JFK.